Welcome, everyone. I'm Mike Akane, CEO of the Hawaii Community Foundation. I want to thank you for joining us today and thank you for your generous support of the Hawaii Resilience Fund. Before I begin, I'd like to also thank the members of our Board of Governors who are with us today from across the state. Our chair, of course, Mr. Peter Ho, also Jeff Arce, Alan Arizumi, Judge Mike Broderick, Kale Kadena, Roberta Chu, Bob Harrison, Mike Irish, Kathy Richardson, Jennifer Sabas, Leah Sheehan, and Toby Taniguchi. Thank you for your support. Can you move to the next slide? This is our agenda for the morning. We've been offering these virtual briefings as a way to share insights about what we're learning as we move through this pandemic. To date, we've moved more than $6 million into the nonprofit community. Most of these dollars are leveraged with partners, sometimes as much as 4 times multiplier. Rarely are we funding alone. We work really hard to bring others alongside us. Most of you have seen this next slide. It's our phases of how we are pushing out our funds. Prior to the pandemic, we established memorandums of understandings with most of the counties, which adopted a 4-phased approach to dealing with disasters. Phase 1, risk reduction and readiness up here. This is all about strategies to flatten the curve under the pandemic. We've pushed about $3 million into this phase so far. Phase 2, rapid relief and response. This is all about getting resources to families, bridging until government resources hit, or policy issues that move us to the next phase. We've done about $3 million there as well. Phase 3, recovery and stabilization. Right now we're straddling between phase 2 and phase 3. Still a lot more work to do in phase 2 though, unfortunately. And then phase 4, rebuilding resilience. This is post-pandemic stuff. During peacetime is when we need to be working the hardest to build a more resilient economy, to build a more resilient community, and really to get a stronger civic infrastructure platform in place. All of those things that allow for a much more resilient Hawaii. This strategy guides our grant making. It creates a discipline and a focus for us, and definitely brings clarity in our communication with our partners, especially at the state and county level. Thanks to all of you on this call, we've raised more than $11 million. Thank you, thank you, thank you. With still more than 130,000 unemployment filers still waiting for their first checks, this money is going to go a long, long way. We're really excited that Ron Mizutani is going to join us. I had the chance to volunteer last week at the food distribution event at Aloha Stadium, which we've titled Rise Resiliently. This 8-week effort was made possible because of Ron's leadership, but also the really good partners he's brought to the table. Bank of Hawaii joined the Hawaii Resilience Fund to put up $1 million, which was then matched dollar for dollar with the city and county of Honolulu. Along with Ron's industry partners, this really allowed for scale, which is critical for this time right now. It was an emotional charged day for us. This is an example. Onto the next slide. This is an example of the families your funds are serving. This is a small family waiting for the food line to open. He and his wife recently adopted this young guy that is taking a nap on his mother. He was recently let go by Medigold. And this story is told just over and over and over again. So these are the families you guys are serving. So thank you very much. Before we bring Ron Mizutani up, I've asked Senior VP and Chief Impact Officer, Chris Van Bergik, to give just a high-level landscape of Hawaii's vulnerable food system. Hopefully this will bring a bit more context to our conversation today. And just a reminder that if you have questions during the briefing, please use the chat box. Don't wait until the end to load up the chat box. Do it during the presentation. We'll get to as many of those questions after Ron's presentation is done. So I'll pass it on to Chris. Chris.
Thank you, Micah. And let me add my welcome to all of you that have joined us on the call. My goal for the next few minutes is to provide you some background on what HCF is doing to address the food dimension of this crisis. I also am going to try and shed some light on the statewide landscape around food, feeding, and farmers. So this slide here right now shows you through our Resilience Fund, our Island Strong funds, and many of our donor advised funds, HCF has granted nearly $3 million through 83 different grants across the state to address food distribution, feeding, meals preparation, and support for farmers. Many of the largest grants that we've made have gone to the 4 food banks that exist in each county. So the Hawaii Food Bank, you're going to hear from Ron in a few minutes. The Hawaii Food Bank operates on Oahu and Kauai. The Kauai Independent Food Bank serves Kauai exclusively. The Maui Food Bank covers all of Maui County, and Hawaii Food Basket operates on Hawaii Island. So these are really critical players in the whole emergency food delivery system, since they're able to purchase food locally and nationally at very low prices and redistribute it at no cost to 360 different community-based food pantries, community centers, churches, and soup kitchens. As a result of COVID-19, we've also encouraged a lot of these grantees, and they've done it on their own also, whenever possible, to purchase locally grown produce, meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. And this is one way that we're trying to help keep our local producers in business. In terms of prepared meals, we have some higher risk and special populations that are just not able to access food distribution sites. We have many organizations that are using their own or they're using borrowed commercial kitchens to prepare and deliver meals to folks. So some of the partnerships have also included notable chefs and restaurants, which has the added benefit of preserving some of the jobs in those businesses. The groups that are being served include people who live in really remote areas or they just don't have cars, elders who need to stay at home because they may be high risk, pregnant women or women that have newborn babies, and folks who are disabled. So one thing that's not here is we decided early on to steer away from meals for school-age children since the DOE opened up, at this point, is about 90 different sites across the state. They use their kitchen facilities, and they also have access to federal funds to pay for all of it. This next slide provides some detail on the number of distribution sites that exist on each island. And these numbers actually change fairly regularly, and more sites get added all the time. The network is not without some holes, but it's been pretty successful so far at serving population numbers that have really exploded. On the right side of the slide, you can see a pie chart that shows you how our funds have been distributed by county. So it's hard to believe that this crisis is only about 2 months old at this point, and we have learned quite a bit in doing this work. I think one big lesson is we thought that the first federal COVID relief funding package, which was passed in late March, we thought the funds would move quickly to the state, and as we all know, that has not been the case. Funds that are targeting economic relief to families and farmers has been extremely slow. We are hoping that as unemployment payments get processed and COVID relief payments arrive and additional resources come into the SNAP and the TANF benefits programs, and as some businesses tentatively start reopening, we're hoping to see that in June that the demand for emergency food may ease up a little bit, but that remains to be seen. We've also found that there really is no long-term food security plan for the state of Hawaii, despite years of conversation about how vulnerable we are as a state. And I think some of the scrambling that occurred is really part of us paying the price for the lack of that kind of state plan. We have found that we've learned that 80% of our locally grown produce goes to supplying our hotels and our restaurants. And when these outlets shut down overnight, the larger farms had a harder time shifting gears. smaller and medium-sized farms and producers found it possible to pivot somewhat to local farmers markets, food banks, and local meal distribution. As for meals and feeding programs, we really are lacking any sort of high-level coordination and data collection around who needs meals, who can produce them, who has refrigerated trucks to deliver them, and make sure that they get to people that need them without duplication of effort. And that sort of system would have been really nice to have. It's not all bad news. There's been some encouraging bright spots. You're going to hear from Ron in a few minutes about some new partnerships that have been forged between food producers, restaurants, chefs, and literally an army of volunteers that have moved mountains to make sure that no one in Hawaii goes hungry. We've been encouraged by partnerships with county governments across the board. The crisis is really demonstrating that the local nature of impact, and each administration has stepped up in its own way and reached out to us with an open mind about how to partner. Our communities have a new appreciation and demand for locally grown produce, which we hope will be sustainable into the future. Many organizations that run what are called CSA programs, these are community supported agriculture programs, and they provide a regularly delivered box of local produce to subscribers. Many of these programs have seen a tripling and a quadrupling of the number of subscriptions to their programs. And lastly, we've also been encouraged by a lot of new collaborations and alliances that have emerged, and existing collaborations that have a renewed sense of importance. This slide here looks a bit fragmented, but what we tried to do is capture and map some of the many food-related coalitions and alliances that are working on different aspects of the food issue. These include those that are focused on farmers and sustainable agriculture, those that are focused on farm-to-school programs, health-related groups. There's one group that's focused exclusively around how to make the SNAP benefits program more efficient. And we have another new group that's emerged around elder feeding programs, and to make sure that elders who are confined to their homes get delivered meals. So the point of the slide really is that in the absence of a real coherent state vision and plan, it's really the nonprofits and the constituent groups and interested parties that are self-organizing around different problems. It may not be the most efficient way to develop a state approach, but it's really what we have at the moment. So looking forward, there's some opportunities that we have our eye on. We believe there's a lot of benefit to these networked approaches that were sort of mapped out on that previous slide. We think that investing in their ability to collect data and information might make them more powerful. As the federal funds start to move into Hawaii, we're looking for ways that we can make sure that Hawaii draws down all the federal funds that we're eligible for, and that we don't leave any of it on the table. Some groups are going to need help and probably some technical assistance to apply for some of these grants, because some of the requirements are a little bit onerous. We're also on the lookout for innovative projects that we think can be scaled up. I mean, we are talking about tens of thousands of people who are food insecure, and some of our responses in the past have frankly been too small. And lastly, we're mindful of the need to support policy and advocacy efforts that will emerge in response to this crisis. The experiences that we're all having right now are hopefully valuable, and we want to make sure that they're heard as we think about reemerging from COVID-19. So those are my comments on these slides. What I want to do right now is make a virtual handoff to our good friend who's dialed in and is at Aloha Stadium right now, Ron Mizutani.
Chris, thank you very much. Micah, thank you for having me. And thank you for all on the call this morning. Sorry about my JPO outfit. I don't know how many people remember JPOs, but we are actually in the midst of food distribution right now here at Aloha Stadium. We've been going strong for about 2.5 hours now. Our goal again today is to distribute food to 4,000 households, and we will accomplish that. I want to start by saying, first of all, thank you again to everybody on this call for making a difference in our community. It's been one heck of a ride. I think we all can say that we understand that nobody was really ready for COVID-19 as a state. But at the same time, I tell our team that COVID wasn't ready for us, and the resilience of our community and the wherewithal to fight this and meet it head on. When I talk about numbers, and I'm going to talk a little bit about numbers right now, I remind our team that while we do share numbers, each number is more than that. It's a story. It's a family. It's somebody impacted by COVID-19, somebody who's already food insecure, because insecurity is a crisis for 1 in 8 every single day. But when we come upon these incidents and events, whether it be a tsunami or a hurricane or a government shutdown, and in this case, COVID-19, the face of hunger evolves. And again, each number has a story. So if we look at our distribution numbers for the month of March, and keep in mind, when you look at these numbers, COVID-19 really didn't arrive on our shores to mid-March, but our team was really keeping an eye on what was happening with Asia and their response to COVID-19, but also the ripple effect it was having on nonprofits, particularly in food banks. And I had a keen eye on what was happening to inventory and supply. And on March 12th, was my first time I reached out to community, some of my old media friends, and even our own team to say, this is coming, and we need to prepare, and we need to understand what panic purchasing is going to look like and the impact it'll have on our communities, not only on our shelves, but also eventually on food banks and the stresses that it would put on food banks. Nobody really could understand that yet because it hadn't really even hit America, let alone Hawaii. But we made some purchases early in March, knowing that this was on its way. And because of the geographic isolation that we have here in Hawaii, it takes 2 to 8 weeks to get a 40-foot container across the Pacific Ocean. We had to pull the trigger on purchases early. So when you look at that 1,089,719 number, that increase that we saw compared to the same time last year was really just the last 2 weeks of March. Again, our first positive didn't come to mid-March, but we instantly saw an increase in demand. And as we planned through April, we anticipated 2 million. We ended up distributing 2.1 between Oahu and Kauai, but you can see the alarming statistic as far as increased percentage. We were not anticipating that sharp of an increase that early in the game, especially on Kauai as well, with a 102% increase at the same time last year. And as we look into May now, we're on May 15th, and we are on pace to distribute well over 3 million. And my gut says it'll be closer to 3.5. The first week alone, we were averaging an astonishing 113,586 pounds per day distributed to our community. That's if you look at our normal average between 40 to 50,000, again, we are on pace well ahead of 3 million. And again, I think it's going to be closer to 3.5 million pounds of food. And again, these are numbers. But again, I keep reminding our team that we have to focus on more than just numbers, because not only does it matter about quality, but also matching the supply with demand comes with a lot of juggling. So to give you an idea of our food purchases every year, at about this time of the year, we purchase about $33,000 worth of food per month during the spring months. And that's because we have a lot of events that happen in the spring. We have our letter carriers event that you put food in the blue plastic bags. That was canceled. We have our fundraiser with Great Chefs event that has been postponed. We have our food drive, which we had already pushed into August, which turned out to be a blessing in disguise. So in years past, that $33,000 a month was all that we needed. But if we advance to the next slide, you're going to see what we've done in March already. Again, we pulled the trigger early on those purchases, and $604,000 just to meet the demand in March. Again, we were a little ahead of the game, but in April, you can see that we spent nearly $1 million in Hawaii Food Bank monies. By June, we anticipate that will be well north of 3 million. And depending on how things unfold, it may be close to $3.5 million. And our annual budget is $400,000. So again, no one was prepared for COVID-19 for sure. We certainly didn't budget for it. But at the same time, I don't say this because it sounds cliche, but I don't think COVID-19 was prepared for us, because we in Hawaii, we're resilient. I've lived through 2 hurricanes, being a Kauai boy and understanding what it takes to survive. And we're seeing that right now. We're seeing a very resilient community. But that being said, we're also seeing the face of hunger evolving. And we kind of saw that during the government shutdown last year, when people were, missing paychecks. And after the second or third paycheck, it became very evident that a crisis like this can change the face of hunger. But luckily, we've been able to partner with innovation, with creativity, but also relationships. At the end of the day, this is all about relationships. Everyone on this call understands about relationships and the beauty of that in Hawaii, but also the importance of it, to not only nurture it, but also develop it and to keep it safe, and understand that we need to show accomplishments and results based on what the trust that instilled in us and given to us, really. So this public-private partnership right now that we are currently executing right now here at Aloha Stadium was the gratefulness of all of you on this call. I mean, in Hawaii Community Foundation, thank you, Micah and Chris and all the leaders, Bank of Hawaii Foundation, and of course the City and County of Honolulu. We could not have done it without money. This takes a tremendous amount of execution. Every dime of this, I decided early in this process, and I spoke with Chris and Micah early, as well as our food partners, as well as the mayor, that every dime of this fund, $2 million in funding, would go straight to food. Not a dime of it to our administration, not a dime of it going into what we could do to execute this. We were going to spend the money on food, and we we're going to go local. We're going to spend the money on local produce, on local beef, and local companies, so that we were keeping I wouldn't say igniting our economy, but keeping our economy moving forward as best as possible, and keeping our farmers farming and our ranchers ranching. Interesting to note, though, we do surveys every one of these 5 now. Today is our 5th one. And we were finding that we have questionnaires that we're sending to each vehicle of the 4,000 households that we aim to serve every single week, twice a week. More than 80%, in fact, 83% has been the kind of the norm and the average of those surveyed in each vehicle say that someone in their vehicle, someone in their home lost their job or furloughed due to COVID-19. And to me, that's very significant. That means we're hitting the folks that only need it immediately, but also those that never thought they'd have to raise their hands in their lives for food. Again, the face of hunger has changed. But like Chris said, it's not all negative. I mean, we've had a lot of high points in crisis, and my cup is always half full kind of guy. And I look for ways we can always look at things as opportunities. I don't like the word challenges. I know they're real, challenges are real, but I call them opportunities. And I do that every day in my approach at the food bank and every day in life. You can ask my kids who are probably sick of hearing me preach through the years, but we have opportunities in front of us. One of them is to build relationships. And I think that's been the high point of all of this for me. Knowing how valuable philanthropy is in Hawaii, I didn't realize, I didn't realize how much philanthropy was going to carry the day. And I'm just humbled by all of you on this call, and all the foundations that have reached out during this time, because you guys have made this work. I don't want to point fingers on this call, because that's not what this is about. This is about understanding numbers, but also understanding how we can get better. But Lord knows we have fallen short for our community in different ways. It has nothing to do with philanthropy. It has nothing to do with nonprofits. It has everything to do with lack of execution and a real plan. My goal is post-COVID, we're going to have a plan. And if we don't, shame on us. But the nonprofits have also showed resilience and creativity and innovation. For Hawaii Food Bank, and I only can speak of ourselves at this point, but I can tell you for a fact, nonprofits across our state, our beautiful state of Hawaii, have been innovative, and they've built these relationships. if we could move on to the next slide, one of the things that I saw value in early was something that I wanted to do even post a pre-legislative session, was to find ways to provide incentives for our farmers. When this happened early, I called Hawaii Farm Bureau. I called Brian Miyamoto. I said, look, Hawaii Food Bank's going to invest money, our own skin in the game. If the state's not going to do it, we're going to do it. We're going to get the conversation moving. We're going to invest $200,000 in purchasing local agriculture products to distribute to those in need. We're going to keep you guys going. And he said, let's do it. And we had the agreement in hand in the next day, and we've now purchased well over 100,000 pounds of food from the Farm Bureau in the last 2.5 weeks. Shortly after that, I called the Longline Association. I said, Eric, I want to do the same for you guys. I can't give you 200,000, but let's start at 50,000 and see what that can do. Let's get our fishing back on the ocean. Let's keep them going. Lord knows that our fishing industry was hurt very hard because of the restaurants closing. We're not saving the industry with a $50,000 commitment, but we got people talking of the value of that is and the importance of this when we come back and our economy continues to move forward. Those are the kind of innovative partnerships that we started that I can speak of, that I know a lot of folks said, hey, there's value there. And we got the attention of other foundations and really the community and lawmakers. You know, I made a call to Speaker Psyche and I said, look, please get Brian Miyamoto in front of others. Thank you, brother. I can be a big crybaby sometimes, but get them in front of, so that they can have a voice at the table. They need a seat at the table during this crisis, but more importantly, post-crisis. And so when I look at preparing for the future, and this is what really I think we need to focus on. Right now we're executing. Nonprofits are, philanthropy is delivering. The state hopefully gets going. I'll leave it at that. Our counties have been incredible. We have similar programs right now. What's happening on at Aloha Stadium being duplicated with Mayor Kawakami and his administration. They said, hey, how can we mirror that? So we gave them our plan. We simplified it and made it a little smaller as far as you know, volume. And they already have their second distribution coming up tomorrow in Kapa'a, I believe. Their first one was last week, where they had about 450 bags, or almost 500 households served. Maui said, let's do the same here. So it's happening. And again, it's taking action. But what will it take for this state to move forward? And I think it's going to take listening. And we talk about listening. There's a difference between listening and hearing, right? We hear that from our parents all the time. But we really got to listen. We got to listen to those who've been on the front line during this crisis. And I say we, I mean everybody, not just lawmakers, not just decision makers and policy makers, but we as a community need to collaborate and come up with solutions. We need to learn. We've had opportunities to learn. We all have, even my team. If you know everything, I got news for you, pal, you don't. And that's something that I always stress, not only to my own family and family at the Hawaii Food Bank, but every chance I get with lawmakers and my friends down at the Square building. Brother, if you think you know everything, you don't. And at the end of the day, it's going to take action. We can talk and meet and have committees and subcommittees and all the things that come with that, but I don't have patience when it comes to stuff. I need action. And again, the table is set. We've learned valuable lessons from COVID-19. And I truly believe that we have the right players in place right now that can create real action if given the opportunity to be heard. And mark my words, I've already had conversations with Brian Miyamoto. I've talked to Micah in depth. I've talked to all of our other nonprofit organizations. We will have a very strong voice come next session. But it's going to go beyond just what happens at that Square building. It's going to take a commitment from private sector, as well as the nonprofit world, and continued support from all of you. I want to thank you for believing in our mission at Hawaii Food Bank, but also believing in the missions that you all serve and support. Lord knows our nonprofits right now, some of them are hurting badly, and they do good work. One more thing that I wanted to add, one of the things that I thought was important as we were creating this distribution and effort was I wanted to include community partners in this, because I knew that this was impacting families in a very deep way. I called my dear friend Nancy Creedman. I said, look, we need domestic violence here. Families are hurting. and I know this is having an impact on families. She said, please let us be a part of it, Ron. I called Child and Family Service. I called the importance of our census right now. And I said, we need your representation here. Get information out to the folks who need it. And hopefully they will share it with others. It's going to take a village. And I don't like using cliches, but it really will. But while our shelves at Hawaii Food Bank are bare, I know all of our hearts on this call are very full. So again, I humbly thank you for the opportunity, Micah and Chris and everybody from HCF. I love you guys all, and I look forward to answering any questions that I can. As soon as I can, though, I need to get back to our team because my phone is blown up, and I want to make sure that our distribution is going as best as it can. But thank you again, Micah, for having me.
Thanks very much, Ron. I think it's pretty amazing what you folks have been able to do in a really short time. We have a couple of questions that I wanted to put out there. There were a few questions around, do we have enough food to feed people? And what would be your estimate of what it would cost to feed our population through the end of the year?
Micah? I think that one's for me. That's a great question. I'm going to backtrack a little because, Chris, as you know, we've done good work together with Hawaii Hunger Action Network. One of the things that I went to the legislature was this beginning of the session was we need to be prepared in the event of a crisis. We need to have a plan of preparedness. What would that take? It will take money. So we had asked for the legislature for $2.5 million to purchase food on ground so that we wouldn't have, in the event of a hurricane, we wouldn't have to worry about if our ports were down or what we're seeing right now with a lack of inventory. At least we'd have food on the ground to carry us through immediate crisis. And I was thinking more of hurricanes and not COVID-19. That bill deferred in a heartbeat. And I didn't shame any of the lawmakers, but I did say we're missing an opportunity here. I won't say the lawmaker's name, but basically that individual told me, Mizutani, if I give you $2.5 million and you don't spend it, I just lost $2.5 million. I said, no, sir, you were prepared. You were prepared. But we'll revisit this conversation shortly after 3 weeks later, COVID-19 hit. What will it take? A lot of it depends on if the economy comes back. I should have a better idea of today by what kind of needs we're seeing today in our distributions. Granted, this is just one snapshot of what we do. We have 200 partner agencies serving food every single day. So until I see that dropping off, no, the needs are still there. So with that in mind, I couldn't even put a number on it without some real analysis, and that would be irresponsible on my part. I do know what we're spending to get to June to continue to execute what we're doing. And again, it'll be north of $4 million. And that's just Oahu, Kauai. That's not counting Maui. That's not counting Hawaii Island, who are seeing the same kind of unemployment numbers, if not even higher. Maybe not by population, but certainly by percentage of those who need employment and assistance. They're seeing that on our neighbor islands in a very big way. So that would take some analysis to really come up with a number that is meaningful and accurate.
Okay, thanks, Ron. We had a question around, do you have a sense of, or can you talk about the opportunities that there may be for the food banks to access some of the federal dollars?
Yeah, so I have a team that just does that. The federal dollars has to go through different channels and to get to food banks. One of those channels is the state government. And frankly, I haven't even got an email from the state. So I'll leave it at that. I'm done asking, and we have to move forward. But other than that, we do have programs with the USDA. In fact, we're getting some boxes of food that we're going to start distributing next week to those in need. We're going to start out in Waianae at one of our massive distributions, and we'll continue that. The good news is a lot of our local vendors and companies were awarded these USDA opportunities, so we can get the food here quicker and to those in need. I've been in constant contact with our congressional leaders with Senator Hirono and especially Representative Case and also Senator Schatz as how we can continue to keep Hawaii top of mind and nonprofits, not just the food banks, because the nonprofit world is definitely suffering, but we need to have food as part of that conversation. We can have the infrastructure in place. We can continue to do the testing. That's all very important. But at the end of the day, it takes fuel, and that fuel is in food. And sometimes I think that gets lost in the shuffle, but we have the attention now of those who are making decisions. So we continue to press our congressional leaders to find opportunities to help the food banks.
So Ron, how, other than providing financial assistance, how can people help?
That's another great question. I mean, we have about 275 volunteers out there right now as I speak. Micah, you saw it with your own eyes. It truly does take an army to execute what we're doing today. Nothing has ever been done at this scale in Hawaii. You may have seen other images and video of other states that have similar distributions. We don't want Carmageddon. We don't want people waiting in their cars for 6-7 hours. The best way to execute that is to get volunteers here, train them, get them going, and get the people in and out. And we've gotten very, very efficient since our first distribution at YPO just a few weeks ago. I can't believe it's only been 2 weeks, but we are a well-oiled machine. Today we started an hour and a half early, and that's through volunteers. So you ask, how can you help? Volunteers is always going to be an issue and always a challenge. I'm so grateful that our Hawaii Food Bank volunteer base has been loyal. There are people every day before a briefing at one of these distributions, the first question I ask is, who's returning? And everybody who raises their hand, it's usually more than half. I said, boy, you guys are gluttons for pain. But no, they understand the emotional gratification and the connection that they're doing with people, even if they're putting their heads down as they're gathering food. Michael, you saw it firsthand, people crying. I saw your tears, my friend, and your tears were very real as well because you saw it firsthand.
Yeah, it's I tell people, it's fueling the soul, but at the same time, you get a little bit of PTSD walking out of there. So it takes a little time to recover.
Yeah.
What might help, Ron, is just a little bit of the flow of how the day goes and when the volunteers are needed, because there's probably quite a few people that are part of organizations that could maybe help coordinate the next few weeks as your need rises.
Yeah, so we've kind of moved things up. Again, learning lessons along the way and getting and finding out what works, what doesn't work, what needs to be tweaked. And today it was good. So we're asking volunteers to arrive about 6:45. They check in, they're briefed, they're all equipped with PPE. We're trying the best we can with social distancing, even if it's this massive of an effort. Our food partners are all well trained as far as space, what they need. I can't say enough about the city's participation in this, and really the Caldwell administration has been awesome as far as supporting us. HPD has been incredible, moving traffic along, coming up with traffic engineering plans to keep the cars off the streets and the freeways and being good neighbors. But our volunteers are packing by 7:15, and I keep reminding them to hydrate because it's warm out there. If you're thirsty, it's too late. By 8:30, 9 o'clock, I'm looking to start our distribution. Even though we say 10 o'clock, we've been trying to start a little earlier to get those who arrive at 7. And trust me, there are folks who've been circling the Aloha Stadium by 5 o'clock and sometimes even earlier. But HPD has been very good about moving them along so that we don't become a traffic issue. But distribution started today at 8:35, and we'll probably go strong till about 2:30 today. On Wednesday, we went to about 3:15. Again, everybody who came through the gates left with food, and that is so very important. And that's only through volunteer efforts. So it takes at least 250 volunteers to execute something like this. And there's something going on every day. So it doesn't only have to be here at the stadium. If you go to hawaiifoodbank.org, here's my opportunity. You can go to there and figure out a way to volunteer if it works for you individually. I got friends here that I surfed with back in the 70s and 80s showing up because they saw us on television. They came with their sons so that they could teach them a lesson about giving back. So you never know who's going to show up. It's a good time, time for bonding, time to build relationships. But at the end, it's also about giving back to your community. That's one way you can help this effort.
You know, Ron, you know, many of us, for me especially, I wasn't really familiar with all the players that you've brought to the table. You know, Hawaii Food
Yeah.
Alliance was one that, you know, was just kind of behind the curtain, and they've rose up to be a really
Yeah.
important partner for you.
Yeah.
Can you speak to some of those partners and maybe educate some of our listeners about some of those key partners, the role they
Yes.
played, and how you see them playing in our system going forward?
Good question, Micah. Well, you know, we have, so our inventory, food inventory in Hawaii is fragile. And I think we've all learned that. And that's another lesson learned through all this process. Again, it takes 2 to 8 weeks to get something to Hawaii, at least from the food bank. But on the West Coast, you can get here in 5 days. Still, that being said, without food partners on the ground, and I'm talking about local distributors, farmers, ranchers, fishermen, we don't have what we have out there today. So our Hawaii Farm Bureau has been amazing to get. Today we have on the line papaya, sweet potatoes, cabbage, cucumbers, pineapple, bok choy. I mean, just amazing, fresh produce. And then Chad Buck from Hawaii Food Service Alliance has been a great partner of ours for years. A very generous man, and his wife Steph. They have worked with our ranchers on Kauai and really all the islands. And today we have fresh beef recently slaughtered from Kauai on the line, along with just eggs and breads that are baked here in the islands. Again, more potatoes and Cisco Hawaii, used to be HFM, but now called Cisco Hawaii. Jason Wong and his team have been incredible partners as well. And they, you know, they're distributing close to, I mean, today folks or families are getting about 60 pounds of food in each household. So if we've encouraged, if we can, multiple households per vehicle, just to try and minimize traffic. But if you're walking or driving in here with the 3 placards, that means you have 3 family households in the vehicle. You're getting about 160 pounds of food today. And that should last you a good time, a good portion of time. I saw that one of the questions asked, Mike, and I don't want to jump ahead, but because I know people are saying, well, how do you guys monitor who's receiving the food? The first and foremost thing about Hawaii Food Bank is access for all. We never turn away anybody. That being said, as part of our surveying that we do with each vehicle, we're asking a few questions that we're mandated to do just to gather some data, because data is very important post this event. But one of the questions we did ask is anyone in your home or in your vehicle recently unemployed or furloughed because of COVID-19? And 83% of them, it's been steady the whole time, has said that COVID-19 has impacted their employment. Again, that stresses to me that we're hitting a very real specific community in these efforts, at least with the city, and that people who really need it, who may never have raised their hands in the past.
Ron, what do you do with, you run out of food and there's still people in line? What happens to those folks?
So far, Chris, it hasn't happened. The Waipio, our first one, we learned lessons about traffic flow. And so there, that first effort, there were folks that were stuck in traffic that did not receive. And we apologize for that. Again, it was a pretty steep learning curve. We've never done this level of distribution. And that's one of the reasons why we moved to Aloha Stadium and eventually also to Leeward Community College. But we're back at the stadium for the rest of these distributions. Since returning, or since the Waipio effort, we have not turned anybody away. So everybody who's come through receives. The moment we know that we're at 4,000 households and we have a placard system that's pretty efficient, we know before they even come through the gate who's going to be 4,001. We ask HPD to shut the gate down and remind folks, and we get on social media and all the channels that we can to say that today's distribution is POW. We'll be back Wednesday, or we'll be back Friday. So I'm very humbled to say that the last few efforts have gone where nobody has gone home without.
So Ron, you distribute, in addition to this big food event, you also distribute food to all of these food pantries.
Yes.
And can you say something about what they're seeing? Because those are, you know, that's a much wider net that happens.
Yes. So it's, Before the city's partnership with us and HCF and the Bank of Hawaii Foundation, we were really seeing significant increases at our distribution points. A lot of them are what we call Ohana Produce Program. These are like our massive distributions. You may have been on the freeway in Kalihi under by the Samoan Church on Vineyard with Surfing the Nations. That is every Thursday. There's about 500-600 people at that particular distribution. All of those bigger distributions and even the smaller full food pantries were seeing a spike, and that was across the state, not just on Oahu. I mean, I know that the food basket saw that same spike. Maui Food Bank certainly has, and on Kauai we have as well. So that's where the real work gets done sometimes. I mean, these publicized events at Aloha Stadium is not the only game in town. Certainly not. I mean, what we do every single day, people may not know about. So we try our best to, during these efforts, to remind folks that if you are in a different area, there is a food pantry serving you and your community. So if you go to hawaiifoodbank.org, we have a map of Oahu, and if you open up that tab, it's very simple to navigate if I can do it. And it shows you the exact location, the address, the day, the time, the church, where you can go in your community where you have a food distribution. So again, people saying, well, this is not for everybody. We can't get a vehicle to the stadium, or how does my kupuna get some food? There are opportunities for you to get food in this robust infrastructure that we have in place that's duplicated on each island.
Okay. I have one last question for you, Ron. I've had some folks sort of raise the question about how do you think about and how do you determine whether a family has real need or not? I know you've talked about, it's food for all, but I mean, how do you think about that issue of, well, does this family really need it or not?
Good question, Chris. And you hear it on the line today. I mean, the line outside of the stadium. I mean, sometimes we get caught up in perception. Somebody pulls up in a BMW or a Mercedes, and you say, "Really? Do you need food?" But if you were working at a hotel, and your wife was working at a hotel, and you both lost your jobs, or you both were waiters or servers in a restaurant, and you drove a nice ride, that doesn't mean you don't need food.
Yeah.
Sometimes I share my testimony, and I'll share with all of this audience. I grew up hungry as well. And you don't know everybody's story. My mom was a single parent, worked 3 jobs. I had Raishin shoyu and Vienna sausage for dinner, and it was okay because that's all I knew. And when I went to school at Kamehameha and hear some of my friends talk about what they had for supper, I just was very quiet. Shame? No, I wasn't ashamed, but I understood what it was like to not have. And when people start talking about, well, you enable the homeless, or this is not meant for so-and-so, or you never know. You never know someone's circumstances. So when I go back to that first slide where every number has a story, every number has a story. Every face, like Micah showed, that young man who was working at Metagold, they closed down. Now he has a family to feed. He's hungry. He's raising his hands. Never know. So do we know just by the vehicle they show up in? Do we know just by the clothes they're wearing or the bracelets they have on their arms? No, you don't know. You don't know. So you say, "Iko mamai, let us serve you." And you hope the folks who don't need it don't take advantage of that. You're going to have people who are opportunists, no matter what. We see it during panic purchasing. We see it every time there's something free. Hawaii people love free. But we hope in times of need and crisis, people who don't need say, let others go first. And that's what I was taught. And I think, and I'm very much a believer that that's still part of our Hawaii.
So can I switch gears and put Micah on the spot here a little bit?
Thank you. I'm becoming an emotional basket case here.
You know, Micah, you have an opportunity to, participate in some of the conversations that are going on at the legislature and with state leaders. And I'm just wondering if you have any insights into how people are talking and thinking about food, in the conversations around, how to manage and navigate through this crisis.
Yeah, going into COVID, I think there was a pretty unified voice and unified focus around helping those people who we considered asset limited, income constrained, but employed. Nearly 1 out of every 2 of those people in Hawaii, fall in that category. 11% of them are in poverty. And so I think early on, the focus going, pre-COVID was to focus on early learning to provide families an opportunity for moms to go back to work and dads to go back to work early. We were focused on income inequality. We were focused on affordable housing. Those are the cost drivers that we felt were going to have the greatest impact on middle and low income families. When we went into COVID, the more immediate needs became more exacerbated to us, which was around food. And that clearly, I think right now is being discussed, at least within the legislative arena. I know leadership in the Senate, leadership in the House recognize that to build a strategy in collaboration with the executive office that is seamless, so that those dollars that get allocated are released is been the challenge, I think. And so Ron has done a tremendous job of making that body aware of the situation. Action has been tough. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of this legislative session. It's quick. They're going to reconvene in June, so we'll get another bite at the apple.
Okay. Ron, I know you don't speak for the neighbor island food banks for Maui County or Big Island, but I'm just wondering if you have any insights around, you folks work really closely together, you work really well together. Can you, sort of give us any insights to what you are hearing about neighbor island situations?
Yeah, I can try my best. I have tremendous respect for my partner networks, and I still consider us a state network because we all work together, we all rely on each other, but we also feed off each other and get ideas and innovative ideas and what works, what doesn't work, how'd you get on the county budget, stuff like that. What Rich has done in Maui is amazing. He's literally a line item on Maui County's budget. I need to do that. But that being said, they are definitely feeling the same kind of pinch that we are, and their numbers have spiked. They too are, in some ways, in some counties, are dealing with inventory issues. And then on Hawaii Island, they have access to more produce than we do here on Oahu, and that's a plus for them. But then again, they also have other challenges as well. So what Kirsten does at the food basket and what Rich and his team do at Maui Food Bank, and really that's serving all of Maui County, including Molokai and Lanai, is nothing short of amazing. And for the amount of staff that they have, but they too are sharing that same sort of challenges. But they too are both saying philanthropy is carrying the day, and same on Kauai. We know what's going on in Kauai, and while the county administrations have been incredible partners, because they know that this will take county movement and action before we're going to see state dollars come our way or even federal dollars. Philanthropy has carried the day, but philanthropy won't be there forever. And we have to understand that as a community, we can only ask so much. My old man used to tell me, you don't ask, you don't dance. Well, I started asking early, and didn't I, Micah? Folks responded, but we won't have to. We won't have the luxury of keep asking. We're going to need some serious support from state government and from policymakers and decision makers. They need to understand that we all need to work together. So I think that's every county, every food bank, not only in Hawaii, but across the country is experiencing those same kind of challenges.
Thanks, Ron.
Yeah.
So, Ron, I just want to really thank you so much for taking time out of the big event. I know that you've got thousands of people outside, and we really, really appreciate your wisdom and your insight and all the great work you're doing. So, Micah, I'm going to hand this back to you to wrap us up.
Thank you, Chris. And Ron, thanks for your leadership. Thanks for all you're doing. I know many of you folks know that we're going to be carrying this program onto the neighbor islands. Hawaii Resilience Funds has allocated a good allocation in partnership with Bank of Hawaii. We are in communication with the neighbor island mayors. It's going to look and feel a little different based on the need, as Ron had mentioned, but Ron is sharing that model. I am in communication with leadership in the counties there. They're excited, and so stay tuned to hear more about that. I also want to invite you to our next virtual briefing. Been blessed to have Ray Vara, who's been just an amazing leader in the healthcare arena. He's the president and CEO of Hawaii Pacific Health. That's going to be scheduled for Friday, June 5th, Friday, June 5th at 10:30. Ray's going to give us some really, he's at, how Ron is at, on the front line with food, Ray's at the front line with healthcare. And he's been a very smart and proactive voice on behalf of that sector. And it's going to be an interesting opportunity for all of us. So I want to invite you guys to be there. And then finally, I just want to thank again the very generous people who are on this call. We really appreciate all you're doing. I think Ron said it many times. You folks are carrying the day. We really appreciate all that you're doing. And of course, the leadership from my board, led by Peter Hull, I want to thank you for your support. We really appreciate it. Hello, everyone.